This is a Glendale Library Arts and Culture program, created for teens, edited and hosted by the Teen Library staff. Check out community service opportunities and teen events down in the description box.
Hi everyone, it's Melissa.
And Desiree.
Welcome to the guest episode of Teen Gen Talks.
Today's guest is a 19-year-old community organizer from the Apache and Yaqui nations and currently resides on Tungova territory. As a Los Angeles chapter representative of the International Indigenous Youth Council, they advocate for social and environmental justice through culturally responsive programming, education, and civic engagement to create positive change in their community.
Grab a snack and drink, and let's welcome Bea Gallardo to Teen Gen Talks. Thank you, Bea, for taking the time out of your day to talk with us. We have a lot to discuss.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
To start off this interview, I want to ask, how did you start to advocate for your community, and how has that whole journey been for you?
Yeah, for sure. So as young as I can remember, it really started with me attending protests as a kindergartner. My mom, she was a young parent, but she was going through the journey of, getting her college education and really kind of navigating through those institutions. And so for my mom, seeing me go through school, everything that was going on with the teachers. So there was a lot of funding issues back then. A lot of teachers were going on strikes. Some of them are, that's still a continuous issue of, underpaying teachers and staff, and really just, finding the resources for schools. And so as young as I could remember, my mom would, take me to the school and go and protest with the teachers. And then I think in my older years, I'm not that old, but in my older years, it really started to kick off when I got more involved in my community again. So there was a point where I kind of was having an identity crisis, if you could call it that. As I was going through elementary school and middle school, and it wasn't until high school, right? That's when everyone's trying to figure out who they are and how they identify. And for me, it really started when I started to build relations with my Indigenous community. I think Standing Rock in 2016 had really woken me up in the sense that Natives, we aren't this image in, movies, we're not a people of the past. We're still here and we're still fighting. And there's so many different issues that are concerning us. And so I think that's kind of what gave me the rude awakening, in a sense of this is real, and I think there was just a lot of different variables that kind of had closed me off to everything. One, having the privilege of, living in the city, and two, just my parents were really protective of me. And so really seeing this happen in front of my eyes, I wanted to make a difference in my community. And I actually, if you want to call it, my first job was at the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. I was a youth advisor there. And so that was one of the ways I thought I can get involved, and just being able to advocate for my community, being able to bring a voice, to that table. And from there, it really just kind of started off through networking. That's how I am where I am now, is just networking and really building relations with my community. Yeah, that's kind of my journey. I know that was a long story, but
No, you're fine.
You are an LA chapter representative for the International Indigenous Youth Council. Can you talk a little bit more about IIYC?
Yeah, of course. So the International Indigenous Youth Council was actually started up at Standing Rock. It was founded by Femme and Two-Spirit Indigenous youth. It was through prayer. It was through, protest and protection of the elements, especially the Missouri and Cannonball rivers that, really came the spiritual movement, if you want to call it, the inspiration to aspire to inspire youth of our communities, especially Indigenous youth of our communities, And so once everything was kind of starting to settle down a little bit, that's when everyone was like, okay, we have a lot of work to do in our own communities back home. And so in 2017, we started establishing more chapters. Actually, the co-founder, or yeah, I guess the founder of IOIC Los Angeles, Alexis Sines, was on your show not too long ago. Yeah, and so she is really amazing. She's done so much work building these relations the past 4 years. And so we really kind of just started to see like getting our legs under our feet throughout this last year. And now, we're able to provide culturally responsive programming, civic engagement to our communities, and really try to empower our youth here in the Los Angeles area and Tonga territory. But yeah, that's kind of just how we came along. And, through that, it's been really trying to find, how can we really uplift and empower Indigenous youth and Indigenous individuals in our community.
You mentioned programming. How can you talk a bit more about some of the programming that IIYC has done?
Yeah, of course. So recently, we've had certain trainings like kickbacks. Well, kickbacks are more kickback. They're really laid back.
Yeah.
Those are really moments where we get to just like sit down with our community. It's open to the public and like really just talk about like what are some issues going on in our community? Like what are you concerned about? What are you passionate about? How can we support you? And it's on a very like one-to-one basis and like very grassroots. Like I've never seen anything like that where you just hop on a Zoom call and just talk about like what's on your mind, And so that's one of our programs. Another one includes our talking circles. So those hold Indigenous roots in the sense that, we provide spaces for our folks in the community. Those are open as well. We have our men's circle, our femme circle, and then we have our Two-Spirit / LGBTQ plus circle. And we're hoping to expand more on that. And so a lot of it's just kind of finding the funding to be able to provide more programming to our community. But that's another one. We are now working on doing community fridges and restocking those fridges throughout the Los Angeles area. So we're super excited about that and be able to provide, food security to our neighbors. We also have a Mi Vida Su Vida training, which is usually done in person. Everything has changed since the pandemic. We've all had to go virtual and just navigate all of that. But yeah, so with Mi Vida Su Vida, they're culturally responsive programming about prevention, treatment, and intervention. And so throughout those steps, we try to be able to provide more of a conversation around mind, body, spirit, and really just kind of talk about anything and everything from like sex ed to, houseless individuals and being able to support them, to really kind of like reconnecting you to yourself. There's a lot of different things that one in particular covers. And so we are also hoping that with this next year, we'll be able to provide California native plant workshops to really kind of bridge that connection between people and the land that they reside on. And one thing that we've really been aiming to achieve in this next year, as we introduced ourselves in the last year to this community, is really building those strong foundations, strong intentional relations with the land herself, with the stewards of the land, because we are not asking for consultation, we are asking for their consent, right? And so as guests on this territory, we are looking for their leadership. We are looking to really kind of rely on them as role models. And, they know the land best. And so we're going to go by what they say, and so that's just kind of how it rolls here. But yeah.
That's awesome.
So what is a typical day for you like as a Los Angeles chapter representative for IIYC?
Yeah, for sure. So we are now at a level where we do day-to-day operations. So on top of being a chapter representative, I'm the director of finance and communications. So that looks like going out to, building relations with other educators, building relations with other, grassroots organizations, and kind of, it's more like a liaison kind of work. And just also like managing internal and external communication in that sense. One thing that we've really been trying to work on is really kind of holding down like nonviolent communication in our community and really just kind of getting training on that. Another aspect of it is finance, right? Is applying to grants. I think like one of the most ways to empower youth is to teach folks financial literacy, because that in itself is such a hard conversation And it's so hard to navigate, especially when like you're the first in your family, the first in your community to really do that and really seek those resources. So, we're out looking for grants, other kinds of ways of fundraising, as well as being able to support, our community as well. Like, how are we going to be able to fundraise for you and your concerns? How are we going to be able to uplift you in that sense? And so really kind of working out budgets. We're applying to grants. We're also like managing how are we going to be able to pay folks, right? Because here at IOSCLA, one of the things that we really value is being able to compensate people for their time. And I've seen in my field of just it's kind of really sad to see like the amount of tokenization in my community. We ask our elders to come out, or I've seen other people ask out, their elders to come and, do a land acknowledgement. They speak for 5 minutes and then like, that's it, and I think one thing that I was really taught in my community was that, if you bring someone in, whether it be in your home or to an event, you make sure that, they've got food, they've got water, they're taken care of, all of that. And so we really want to be able to appreciate people for their time, their energy, their words, and their medicine, because that can be draining as well. So also being able to kind of really compensate folks in that sense. And then, yeah, just day-to-day operations and really just trying to be the best that we can be.
You mentioned networking a little while back, and you seem to know how to communicate with a lot of people, which is so awesome. Do you have any tips on those that are trying to, network more, that you could give to them?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say the best way to network is just to like go out and do it. Like I'm gonna be brutally honest. I, have struggled with anxiety and depression. And so like being able to just go up and talk to people is very scary and very intimidating. And I think, a lot of it came from just really supporting myself, right? Because I had to build the confidence to just be able to go out and say like, hey, like, I want to have this intentional conversation with you. And that's like really the key thing too, is like, how are you creating an intentional relationship with the person that you're talking to, right? What can you offer and what can they offer? And how can you do it in a sense that's respectful, that's empathetic, and, that is really going to meet like an end goal that you two have. And so, we will never turn down any, organization that wants to work with us. That's it's just a process. There's so many different things that people can offer to the table, and sometimes people don't even realize that there's just so much spirit and so much resources that people can share. It's really beautiful to see that everyone has something to offer. And so really just kind of learning how to really understand who you're talking to, and understand like how can you, like I said earlier, how can you support them and how can they support you? And that's like the best tip I can give about that.
How can people outside of the Native American community help Native Americans create this positive change?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a wide range of ways to support, right? So one of them is just educating yourself, honestly. Like, yeah, that's that's kind of the first step, right? Of like any issue, is just to identify like what is the problem, right? So really just kind of reading up on like what are some of the concerns? Like right now we're struggling with, our protection for our sacred sites, our protection for our water, our land, our air. On top of that, we have unfortunately a large number of missing and murdered Indigenous women, and I just can't find the words to express the grief that I feel for the families going through that, especially right now where that's going on. And there's a lot of, elders being lost and family being lost to COVID, and a lot of like health restrictions in that sense that are kind of like to be able to provide resources for folks. And so, pushing for legislation, if you have that power, pushing to have that conversation within your family and local levels. Really being able to, I think, also understand like the dismantling of white supremacy, the dismantling of stereotypes, defunding white supremacy, understanding your relationship of consent with stewards of the land and with Indigenous people. and really kind of bringing like the human aspect, right, of like Native people. Like, yes, we're Indigenous, but we're also creators. We're also like musicians and educators, and we aspire to do like outside of this Indigenous box, right? And I think that's one of like the hardest things that we fight on top of like white supremacy. Well, aspects of white supremacy is like just fighting a stereotype, and really kind of like being able to practice our sovereignty. I think allyship is really just understanding like the white savior complex, especially that's a big one, is just like, we don't need white saviors. But also, yeah, a lot of it comes down to just like educating yourself. And there's so many different ways to supporting Indigenous businesses, and start supporting Indigenous nonprofits, donating. Like there's just a huge multitude of ways to support Native people.
And I'm sure, throughout your journey of all of this, you've learned a lot, and you've also had maybe like mentors maybe advise you on certain things. But what is something throughout your journey that you have learned, or maybe somebody has, told you, that has kind of stuck with you?
There's been a lot of things, and I'm just like, if I had to pick like one thing, I think when it comes down to it, it's just like really being able to listen to people. Like I think listening is just such an important key to life, and just like being able to listen to yourself, listen to others, listen to the land herself. Like one of the things that my elders have taught me is like our land isn't quiet. Like it's always alive. And you hear her talking on a day-to-day basis, between it being the birds and the sun on your skin, the wind in your hair. Like it's just about communication, and there's different forms of communication. And I think through all of that, it's been really beautiful, and it really changes my perspective and the way that I organize, and the way that I want to have a relationship with the land, have a relationship with my food, with my water, and has really kind of put into perspective my responsibility as not just an Indigenous person, but a human being to Nicotzan, Mother Earth, and like that I owe, protecting her. Like, yeah, it just goes back to communication and relationships with her.
Before we end, we have some rapid fire questions. The first question is, what is your favorite color?
Ooh, I would say blue. I also like very like earthy colors. But if I had to pick a favorite color, it'd be blue. Between like the sky and the ocean.
Yeah.
What is something you have been proud to say that you have accomplished?
I've been currently going through a journey of trying to like work on my self-esteem, work on my self-confidence, and just work internally. And so if I had to say if there was one thing I would be proud of, it's just like my continuous ambition to become a better person, become a better relative. And like that's who I want to be. I just want to be a better person. So yeah.
I love that. I really love
I know.
that. Yeah, no, because I always want to be a better person too, and like that self-love and all that journey is it's a journey, but yeah, no, I love that answer.
What is some advice that you wish that you would have known when you were younger?
Actually, so I do journaling, and I had answered a recent prompt to this. But when I was younger, I'm gonna get real personal. I was struggling really bad with depression, with just getting out of bed every day, with being able to enjoy everything that I loved, and really being like appreciative. And so if there was one thing I had to say to my younger self, is that like I forgive you, I appreciate you, I'm so happy that you're here. And if I had to give advice, it'd just be to practice gratitude, and you'll see your life change.
If you could have 3 people, dead or alive, for dinner guests, who would they be?
My partner, his name is DA, or he goes by the Tewa on his Instagram and music. And then probably, I would think my little brothers, or like, yeah, just some of my other closer friends, like Masa Wayuhi, Courtney Littleaxe. But I think if it's like a larger scale, it'd probably be maybe Dallas Goldtooth, because he's like an Indigenous activist and educator, but he's also like a comedian. And so I think that would be like a really funny person to just like invite and have for dinner and have like conversation about. But yeah.
What does success mean for you right now?
Ooh, that's a good one. That I can be productive on my own terms. I think like the way that I define success is not like this grind culture. I think that's very intense and can be very harmful to the body, mind, and spirit. And so, yeah, I define success as like being able to kind of like, if you want to call it like be your own boss, but like also just be like, you know, yeah, just being able to be productive on my own terms and really be like as good of a listener as I could be.
What is a book that you have read recently or are currently reading that you would recommend?
Ooh, I actually have it right here on my desk. It's called Inward by Young Pueblo. I read this book yesterday and I was on the first page and I cried. I cried happy tears. I call them like growing pains, right? I cried happy tears, and it just like it it's a poetry book, but it moved me so much so that I've used these poems as like journal prompts. And so like, yeah, I think for me this book has really just kind of, it's about, going inward. It's about introspection and reflection. And so I think like that is the book for that I've read so far, about really just kind of like working on myself.
Thank you so much, Bea. We learned a lot about you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk with us. Can you let everyone at home know about any upcoming projects and where they can connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. So, first and foremost, I just want to thank you all for, listening, and I want to thank you for the time, inviting me. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate this platform, and I'm so grateful, for all of you. And, let's see, as for updates, we do have an Instagram, at IYC.LA. That's our LA chapter page. And then our family page is at IYC Family. And we are currently working on a lot of fundraising to be able to provide more culturally responsive programming, more like trainings, and just kind of, yeah, more resources to our community. And yeah, just, feel free to join us on our next kickbacks. We have them at the second Friday of the month. And so that's really just a time for, folks to kind of get to know us and be able to support you. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it a lot. And
Yes.
honestly, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's Desiree again.
And Melissa,
Did you enjoy this episode?
I'm sure you did.
Then please make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications for this channel.
Check out the Teen Content video playlist here and our latest Teen Gen episode here.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.